First, I'd like to present Ross Gay. Ross was born in Youngstown, and raised in Philadelphia, and still maintains close ties to Philadelphia. He went to Lafayette College, got an MA in poetry at Sarah Lawrence, and recently got a PhD from Temple University. His dissertation was entitled An American Drama, Fictional Representations of Black-White Interracial Desire from 1894 to 2001. Ross is currently an assistant professor of English at Montclair State University in New Jersey, and I'm happy to announce that he'll be moving to Indiana University next year. A Midwesterner he'll be. Ross has published in the American Poetry Review, and the Harvard Review, North American Review, and the Atlanta Review. His work is featured in a very intriguing website called From the Fish House, an audio archive of emerging poets, and there you can hear him reading and hear excerpts from an interview with him. Ross has been a Cave Canem Fellow and a Breadloaf Tuition Scholar, and last year he published his first collection of poetry entitled Against Which. He's currently working on a collaboration with painter Kim Thomas, and he was telling me about a couple of the interesting chapbooks that he's been working on. These are small paintings that are incorporated with the poetry, printed in limited editions, and I hope we can acquire one or two of these for the university libraries. He has two so far, and he's working on a third. I can quote for you from one of our evaluators who selected the poets tonight in regard to his poem that's on the poster here, How to Fall in Love with Your Father. It's lyric, tender, open, elegiac. These are the words that come to mind when I think of Ross Gay's poem, How to Fall in Love with Your Father. As a poem about family, masculinity, and I think the transference of power, it articulates that bone-deep connection between father and son. For me, and I hope for anyone who encounters it, this poem shapes an age-old, inexpressible experience into language. It demonstrates why Ross Gay and his book Against Which, are both rare and special. Welcome, Ross Gay, please.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good evening. I love that when people say good evening back to me. Hey, this is a hard copy of my book. I've never seen a hardcover copy of my book. How do you get this?
We stole it.
You stole it? Tell me where I can steal it. I want to say a couple things. I'm so happy to be back at Penn State, because the last time I was in State College was in 1984, when I came in 4th place in the pass, punt, and kick contest that was right out on the field, wherever the field is, where you have a football team here or something, right? And so thanks to Joe Paterno, too, because I think this is his library. Is that right? So yeah, thanks. The other thing, I learned this amazing thing today. I was looking at the poster, and if you look at the poster, there's like a shadowy image of a guy here who's, my dad was black. And this guy, I can tell from the way his hair is messed up, is not. Mostly, I mean, we could get into like history and stuff. But, and it occurred to me, I had a resistance to that. I felt like, oh, they fucked it up. This isn't my dad. But then you know what? The thing is that the good thing about this, if the poem's good at all, who gives a shit what color my dad was? You know what I mean? If the poem's good at all, who cares what color my dad was? I mean, I had this like revelation. Like, what are you hung up on? This is for everyone. So I'm going to read that poem. I think the posters look great too. How to fall in love with your father. Put your hands beneath his armpits, bend your knees, wait for the clasp of his thinning arms. The best lock, cheek to cheek. Move slow. Do not, right now, recall the shapes he traced yesterday on your back, moments before being wheeled to surgery. Do not pretend the anxious calligraphy of touch was signed beyond some unspeakable animal stammer. Do not go back further into the landscape of silence you both tended with body and breath until it nearly obscured all but the genetic gravity between you. And do not imagine wind now blowing that landscape into a river which spills into a sea, because it doesn't. That's not this love poem. In this love poem, the son trains himself on the task at hand, which is simple, which is finally the only task he has ever had, which is lifting the father to his feet. And because that's the poem that got chosen, I'm going to have a few poems that kind of speak to that subject. It's called Litany. Say birdsong at death's bedside, plus honeybees, their hover and thirst. To say thickets of clover a-quiver, the gold swell limning morning clouds, the light behind it. Say wet eyes, the orbs cockeyed swirl, extubate. Say the honey between nape and scapula, a slow ride between 2 points, the plush rug of ivy swallowing this tree, pissing in a wood. Say the last rattle of the thorax, the peristaltic earth. Say home. Say. And this poem is called Why Would We Not? There's a little prejudice against tall people with this microphone right now. No offense. So, did you guys see this hardcover copy of my book? My buddy, the poet Patrick Rosal, who's sleeping on my couch right now, is his mother died about 10 years before my dad died, I think. And we were talking about that experience of sort of having your parent be gone, a parent, a loved one, whatever. And he said that he was talking to a friend of his. He was in California. He was talking to a friend of his. And they were talking for a while, and the friend said, well, do you talk to your mother still? And he said, no. And she said, well, why not? It's called Why Would We Not? Why would we not speak to the dead who have in their union with the womb of the sea and earth become the hands caressing the burdened muscles churn? What dumb fist said, and when did it say, do not chew bone silt for the sweet there, which as silky loam becomes pure as the idea of air? Said, do not study the precise composition of your hands to speak to your father. Said, do not clutch the scent of a food from a galaxy of islands and be reminded your mother's blousy back as she studies oil in a pan. Said, do not speak to your dead. In this season, roadside flora wrapped, and the river beside me smoothing stones cast in the same breath as the cosmos. Who said this rain to prime the lusty pump of spring? Do not speak to the dead who at long last listen to lament and prayer, at last have become the fullest proportions of light and long for little more than the overt confession, the wounds flooding, the crime for which we are forgiven. Who said, cousin, we ought not speak to our dead who have moved into the threnody of our bodies' wet machinery? Your mother, my father, kin in the folds of everywhere, which is this deep breath I take now to swear the oncoming salve of light promised me by the earth's temporary flirtation with the sun. To you, Father, I speak and sing and cry and curse and tell you the next gorgeous thing I see, which is now. And this last poem is called Two Bikers Embrace on Broad Street. And I just want to say another reason I'm really happy to read here is because I'm reading with Christopher Bursk, whose poems I've known since I knew anything about poetry, which would be like 3 or 4 weeks ago. That's not true. I read Standing Watch when I was like 23. And it's exciting, but I went to high school with this kid. We graduated from the same high school class. We used to skateboard together. It's probably much more exciting to me than it is to you, but I thought I would share it. Two bikers embrace on Broad Street. This is Broad Street in Philadelphia. The bikers I'm talking about are not like cyclists. They're bikers. Maybe, since you're something like me, you too would have nearly driven into oncoming traffic for gawking at the clutch between the two men on Broad Street in front of the hospital, which would not stop, each man's face so deeply buried in the other's neck. These men not my guests to be fucked with. Squeezing through that first porous layer of the body into the heat beneath. Maybe you too would have nearly driven over 3 pedestrians as your head swiveled to lock on their lock. Their burly fingers squeezing the air from the angels on the backs of their denim jackets, which reminds you the 1,000,001 secrets exchanged in nearly the last clasp between your father and his brother, during which the hospital's chatter and rattle somehow fell silent in deference to the untranslatable song between them. And just as that clasp endured through what felt like the gradual lengthening of shadows and the emergence of once cocooned things and continues to this day, so too did I float unaware of the 3,000-pound machine in my hands, drifting through a stoplight while I gawked at their ceaseless cleave going deeper and deeper still. So that Broad Street from Fairmount to the Parkway reeked of the honey-scented wind pushed from the hummingbirds now hovering above these two men, sweetening somehow the air until nectar, yes, nectar gathered at the corners of my mouth like sun-colored spittle. The steel vehicle now a lost memory as I joined the fire-breasted birds in listening to air exchanged between these two men, who are themselves listening forever to the muscled contours of the other's neck, all of us still and listening, as if we had nothing to blow up, as if we had nothing to kill. Thank you.